All right, let's dive in. There's this really powerful narrative that's been gaining a ton of traction online. The idea is that the conflicts we're seeing in the Middle East aren't just regional skirmishes, but they're actually the birth of a whole new world order. So today, we're going to deconstruct exactly how that argument is being made.
So this claim, this dramatic opening, comes from the online channel US Command Insight. And I want to be really clear about something. Our goal here isn't to prove or disprove what they're saying. Our goal is to take their argument apart piece by piece so we can all understand exactly how it's constructed.
We're going to break it all down into 5 key parts. First, the core narrative itself. Then, we'll look at who they call the Eastern Axis of players, what they claim is a game-changing arsenal, their strategy of asymmetric warfare, and finally, what they call the inevitable outcome.
So what's the big idea here? Well, the source argues something that's pretty simple but also incredibly radical. That the era of unchallenged American dominance isn't just ending, it has already ended.
And according to this narrative, we're not talking about some distant future threat. They claim this is a reality happening right now, on the ground, a coordinated effort to, as they put it, systematically dismantle American influence.
Okay, so who are the architects of this new order? According to the source, it's not just one rival power, but a very specific and, they argue, very strategic alliance.
The whole narrative really centers on these 4 nations, framing them as a steel alliance. The source argues this isn't some loose coalition of convenience, but a real team where every single player has a critical role to perform.
And this is where it gets really interesting. The source gives them these very specific, almost movie-like roles. You've got Russia as the steel shield, providing the heavy-duty military hardware. China is the brain, supplying the economic and tech lifeblood. North Korea brings the fiery blade with its firepower. And Iran is the strategic center, the fortified hub for the whole operation.
Now we get to the hardware. A huge piece of the argument here is that a new generation of weapons has totally changed the game, making a lot of the West's most advanced military tech basically obsolete. So first up is the S-400 air defense system. The source calls this thing a death network, a system so advanced that it essentially creates an impenetrable no-fly zone, one that can supposedly neutralize even the most sophisticated stealth aircraft. And this number, 400 kilometers, is absolutely key to their argument. Why? Because a range like that creates this massive defensive bubble that's designed to completely neutralize the West's biggest traditional advantage: air power.
Next up, we have these massive drone swarms. The source claims that up to 2,000 Shahed drones can be launched all at once. The idea here isn't about sophistication, it's about math. You just throw so many targets at a defense system that you mathematically exceed its ability to process them. Then you've got the hypersonic missiles. The source points to weapons like the Fatah II, calling it a death scythe. The point they're making is that its incredible speed, combined with its ability to maneuver in flight, makes it pretty much impossible for current systems to intercept.
But honestly, this next claim is probably the most startling one in the entire narrative. They allege that Russia transferred 1,000 Satan II nuclear ICBMs, that's intercontinental ballistic missiles, to Iran. I mean, a move like that, if it were actually to happen, would fundamentally rewrite the global balance of power overnight.
Okay, so you've got this new alliance and these new weapons. How are they supposedly being used? Well, the narrative argues that it's not just about having cool tech, it's about a fundamentally different way of fighting a war.
What the source is saying here is that this new strategy is basically designed to go right after the West's biggest perceived weakness, its over-reliance on really expensive, really complex technology. The goal is simple: turn the West's greatest strength into its biggest vulnerability.
And this chart really gets to the heart of the economic strategy. The claim is that you can force the West into a financially impossible trade-off, right? Making them spend a $100,000 missile to take out a drone or a rocket that costs just a tiny fraction of that. The goal is to bankrupt your opponent, to win on the balance sheet, not just on the battlefield.
Tactically, the narrative lays out this 3-step playbook. First, you lure and trap. Use dummy sites to trick the West into wasting its multi-million-dollar missiles. Second, you jam and blind. Use electronic warfare to cut off GPS and communications, turning these high-tech forces into, as they say, blind giants. And finally, once your enemy is confused and weakened, you swarm and overwhelm them, paralyzing their most powerful assets, like their aircraft carriers.
So, you've got the new alliance, the new weapons, the new strategy. What's the end result? Well, the source doesn't present its conclusion as a possibility or a prediction. To them, it's an inevitability. This quote from their materials really sums the whole thing up. The core belief is that the era of being able to project power with total impunity is just finished. According to this narrative, the balance of power has already shifted, and there's simply no going back.
And to back all this up, the source points to what it calls clear evidence of this shift. It claims that American carriers are retreating out of fear, that defensive systems like the Iron Dome are being overwhelmed, that economic sanctions are failing, and that former allies in the region are jumping ship. Each point is presented as another crack in the foundation of that old world order.
So, there you have it. We've deconstructed the 5 pillars of this really powerful geopolitical argument. And understanding the structure of these kinds of narratives, how they're built, the evidence they use, the story they tell, is the absolute first step to making sense of them. Which, in a world that's just filled with competing claims, leaves us all with a final and pretty critical question to think about. How do we best analyze these narratives that claim to be revealing a hidden truth?